So this is going to be a walkthrough of my 2019 Colorado ZR2. Bear with me here. This will be the first time I've ever did a narrated video. I'm just going to talk about the various mods I did to the truck. First off, I started with a 589 Fab 1-inch leveling kit for the front. I had done that because I had upsized the tires a little bit to a 265/70 17 on these Icon Rebound. What are they? 17-inch by 8-inch wide wheels. That created a little bit of rubbing when I went up a 1-inch tire size, so I put the 1-inch leveling kit on there, which fixed that. It appeared to be plenty of space where I could go up to a size 33 tires, so I had ordered a set of those and then had those installed. But then what I found is the rubbing was quite bad on any time on the turn. So it was only, I thought a 1-inch, it could handle a 1-inch increase no problem, but by going the 1-inch up and then extending out was just too much. So then I decided to put on the Zone Offroad 1.5-inch body lift. Not a difficult install. I did it this past weekend, just time consuming. I think it was a significant improvement in the look of the truck, that stance. And then this now has plenty of clearance. So the combo of those is a great combination. You'll find the lift in the front does create a little gap between the skid plate and the front bumper. Having the front license plate breaks that up a little bit, so I don't find it too bad. The only part of the install that is a little tricky is the rear bumper, where you have to place. It has brackets that it changes the position of the rear bumper, but then where those brackets connect to the bumper, there's some brackets holding that on, and that comes in contact with the tow bar. So it can be quite difficult to line the holes. I had to do a little beating on that bracket to be able to get the holes to line up there. On the front there, I have some Cali raised ditch lights for $150, including the low mount brackets. It's a pretty good deal. They're quite bright. Those are the lights that go out the side. The install there wasn't too difficult either. Couldn't find any videos on an install on a Colorado, so I referenced some videos on the Tacoma, but you'll find there's a little difference in the way the hinge mounts to the hood on the inside. On the Tacoma, there's holes in the hood on where the hinge, and use bolts to bolt the bracket on. On the Colorado, there's studs coming out. So the normal process is to, because there's two bolts, to do one at a time. That way you can keep one tightened up, and so you don't lose your hood alignment. And you can do that on the Tacoma because there's you can keep one side of it bolted in, unbolt the other side, and then slide the bracket over, and then bolt it in, and then switch to the other. But since there's studs on the mount on the Colorado, if you do one at a time, you can't slide it over because the bracket bumps into the stud. So you actually have to take the hinge completely off one side at a time, the entire side of the hood, which then changes messes up your alignment. But not too difficult to get it back in a line, but just something to think about. Still probably only took like 30 minutes in total. So on the back here, this particular model was the Midnight Edition. If I had it over, I would have gotten it without the Midnight Edition, but there were only two color selections of the ZR2 I was interested in, the black and the white. And in my area, there weren't any white, and all the black versions all came with the Midnight Edition. So, but I ended up, you know, changing out the tires, so that part of the option was not worth paying for. And then the other biggest part is the sports bar, which I think between the bar and lights is almost $2,000. I was actually going to remove these sports bars because I had ordered a Diamondback cover, and on the back here I have a CBI Overland bars, and I was going to modify the CBI Overland bars to mount directly to the cover, to the aluminum cover, and that would have meant removing the sports bar and then rewiring the rear brake light to work back on the cab. But when I test fitted these CBI Overland bars, I found they fit in between the sports bar. So I decided, you know, I'll just make these work for now, and canceled the order on the Diamondback cover, and then started to make some modifications to make these Overland bars a little bit more useful and provide a lot more storage. So first on the storage, I put on the top there some Pelican cases. The one on the right is an actual Pelican case. The one on the left there is a knockoff from Harbor Freight. Pretty good. Found that about 2 weeks ago. It's actually a really nice case. Perfect length, perfect height. Only around $119, which is a lot, about half what a Pelican case would cost. On the Pelican case, I mounted that directly to the Overland bars, but on the other case, I think it's called Apache case, I mount that to some aluminum extrusion from 80/20. I do that so I can take that case off, and I can put on, I have some front runner boxes, and so those can fit on there, and I can strap those down. So any box you want to put on there that, you know, won't fit in, you know, that you need to fit in between the bars, spacing there, you'll need those crossbars. What I will say is this aluminum extrusion is a lot heavier duty than I expected. This particular extrusion here was their 1.5 inch by 3 inch. It's heavy duty. It's overkill for its application here. It looks stronger than the actual steel crossbars. So I would recommend if somebody wants to use some of that aluminum extrusion, they just use the 25 millimeter by 76 millimeter, which is what, 1 by 3. I think that's more similar to what's used on some of those racks like Prinsu. For the high lift jack, at one time we were just using some Unistrut brackets from the hardware store, from Lowe's or Home Depot, to mount to the jack. But since then I just switched to these Rhino rack high lift mounts. I did that because with the L brackets, the spacing had to be lined up exactly to mount the bolt through the holes in the jack, and it just didn't line up. It was hard to get to line up exactly, so I use this Unistrut in multiple places. I find it's very flexible, very functional material, and then, you know, easy to get at the local hardware store. On the back of these Overland racks, to mount these Rotopax, I just bought some spacers from eBay. I think it was like $11 for a pack of 7 of them, and that way I can have the right spacing to mount the Rotopax mount to them, so it will clear this angle here. And I did that on both sides. In the bed of the truck, I had to get creative on storage, since I was no longer going to be using the Diamondback cover. My last truck was a 2016 Ram 2500 with a topper and a decked drawer system in the back, so I've always had plenty of storage, which is very handy when I'm going to the range and I want to keep my rifles locked up and secure and not in the back seat. So I had to come up with some alternatives. One of them was this Duha case, and there's a track that mounts directly to the bed of the truck, and then the case can slide in there, and then when you put your tailgate up and lock the tailgate, there's no way to get the case out. So I'll use this case to transport my rifles that are got barrels of 22 inches or shorter. I use the longer case on the top for the rifles that have longer barrels, like 26 inches, like a 6mm Creedmoor or 6.5 Creedmoor. So in the back here, you'll see I used additional Unistrut to mount the axe and the shovel in the space, the unused space by the wheel well. I also used Unistrut material to mount directly to where the Overland bars mount up here, one on each side. Then got some additional Unistrut that came off this way, so I can put the water jug right here in this empty space. On the front, on the other side, I had two of those flat brackets mounted to each of the bolts holding the Overland bars up, and then just mounted the 7.5 inch Rotopax plate to those, and then put the actual Rotopax mount onto the 7.5 inch plate. That allows a place for the additional Rotopax container in the front. On the back there, I have for recovery gear such as shackles, toe strap, gloves, I have a Rotopax storage case that I just mounted up to the top. There I used as a piece of 12-inch Unistrut that the bolts that mount to the Pelican case that come down from the top, I just mounted 12-inch channel to that, which then allows me to slip in those square nuts in there, and then these can screw right into the nuts and get that out of the way. On the top here, I use the Unistrut to hold on this recovery boards. These were just temporary recovery boards I got until I got a set of max tracks. The spacing of the Overland bars, I spaced them out to line up with the spacing for the holes on the max track. So they didn't exactly line up with these. These are the spacing for the holes looks like about 12 inches shorter, 6 inches on each side. That's why I had to use a piece of Unistrut channel to go across the bracket, so that way I can line up the mounting holes. And there I just use an eye bolt. I use an eye bolt because it's easy to hand tighten into there, and it just screws right into those square nuts that slide into the channel. What else here? That's about it for the back. As I said, there's plenty of storage options in the back that not only is good to secure your gear, but also pretty much waterproof. There's also just one of those, I don't even remember what they're called. What is it? Swing case. That's pretty handy as well. There you'll see two tracks in the back there. That's a work in process. That too is also Unistrut, but that's aluminum Unistrut and without all the notches in it, that I just got from Granger. And what I'm using that is I'm building a slide out tray. So I'm just using that Unistrut. For the tray base, I'm just using some Unistrut. Has these wheels that are slide on the track. It's really designed for sliding doors, but I'm just going to use them to slide along this track here. And Same thing when the drawer's in there and you lock the gate, you can't slide the drawer out. So I'll put some mounting, some ways on the sliding tray to also mount cases on and off, so that way I can lock some cases in there while I run into the store or something. I don't worry about somebody taking off with them. What else here? Only other thing I would add is when you put in the 1.5 inch lift, you're going to have a gap in the rear between the bed and the frame. So there I just used some, just bought some off, same thing off eBay, some neoprene rubber, 1 inch thick rubber, and just cut that to fit in to the gap. You'll see on the fender liner, there's some screws that hold in the felt to the body. That's just where I screwed in the rubber. Husky makes some liners that can go on the inside. They say that it doesn't fit on the ZR2, but I can't see why the inner fender is any different on the ZR2 than a regular Colorado. But they're $139. I didn't want to buy them only to find out they didn't fit. So that's about all I can think of on the mods. These 1.5 inch body lift is, like I say, it's a big improvement over the stance of the vehicle. I kind of wish it came from the factory that way to give a little bit more clearance for larger tires. I don't think it's unreasonable to want to put 33s on a truck. That's about as high up you can go before having to start really worrying about gearing. At least on the Colorado, between the engine power and its transmission. I noticed it's a little slower, but it's definitely still adequate. With the zero offset of these wheels, you can see here it has a little bit of poke. It's pretty aggressive, but looks good. With this, the bolt pattern for these Colorados on these wheels are pretty much the only vehicles I see that use those that bolt pattern is Colorados and Canyons. So I am kind of surprised that there's not more set choices in wheels out there. Usually a lot of them are zero just so they can fit a whole selection, a wide range of vehicles. But since this offset is pretty, bolt pattern is pretty exclusive to the Chevys here. They could have provided a few more offset choices that are in between the stock 33 and these zero offsets, because you don't need that offset to clear the suspension components on the inside. But it does, like I say, it pokes the tires out a bit, which looks good, but then it creates challenges on your rubbing. So I really was trying to find a set of tires that were offset more in the 10 range, but I couldn't find any. I did have a set of XD 132s that had a 25 millimeter offset. They were all black. Nice looking wheel. They have the fake bead locks like these, but their fake bead locks stick out quite a ways because they have some space in there to let the water drain out, which is a nice feature. But then they make them, they just make the bead locks just stick out. Also, they were black, and I wanted something with a little bit more pop, so I switched those out. Well, that'll wrap it up. Thanks for watching.